Live. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, it is 8:10 a.m. and here I am. I gave absolutely no time for people to be aware that there was, in fact, a live stream starting. So if you're ticked off that you didn't get the memo, yeah, it's because nobody got the memo. I had work to get done, and so I parked my fanny down at the computer and decided to just get busy. Okay, so let's just get to it. Actually, quite literally, after getting these couple shots done, I think it'd be the day before yesterday, actually. This shot came out quite nicely. This is the one we used vectors for the background painting, and there was actually a lot to grok out to make that shot work. And then this shot I just did 10 minutes ago. It didn't take very long. I was able to repurpose an earlier shot, but basically he just kind of has overheard the stuff and he's like, oh, ouch. That's that. Okay, so we are about to enter into a very, very cool, hey Clash Tunes, thanks for the fanhood, I greatly appreciate that. Okay, we're about to enter into an interesting sequence. This is we're now finally up to the action stuff. We're up to the fun part. And I'm not gonna lie to you. At this point, we're down to, what do we got? About 6 minutes left in episode 2. 6 minutes and 3 seconds. We are almost under the 6-minute line. Sorry, I thought I transitioned to the other screen. I was scanning over my Vegas timeline to figure out how long this is. Generally, I leave it on this screen so I don't forget I'm on the wrong screen, on the one hand, and on the other hand, then you guys can also see that, the full screen preview. So here's what's about to happen. Number one, TNR rips off her veil. She checks, looks around behind herself, looks the other way. Is the coast clear? She sees a sword, which having a weapon might, be useful. Smash zoom, grabs a sword. I'm thinking she's getting out of dodge. Yep. So we probably could reuse that shot from earlier. Mel sees the hand. So now he realizes there's a human being about to pop out of here, and he could be in trouble because he really isn't supposed to be there, kind of thing. And so he's peeking up over the edge to see if the coast is clear. He kind of observes her coming out. She kind of looks around, takes inventory of the situation, sees the pathway of escape, and it's the same pathway Mel just took. So she heads up there. This shot is not needed. Mel peeks over the ledge. She peeks over, and they're in each other's face, which leads to this reaction. Hey, watch where you're pointing that thing. Who are you? Me, I'm nobody. You did not see me. Yeah, she's... no problem. Okay, so it's probably more fun for me than it is for you, YouTube fans. Only because, it's not like the dynamics of a scene like this or a sequence like this are not, I guess I say this from the vantage point of a writer. It's not like we haven't all seen many of these devices before. But it's still fun, especially if you've been able to kind of grab the characters before we get to this point. So now the question becomes, how are we going to execute? We could, I may experiment with trying to knock out a little bit longer sequences in Tahoma. Tahoma and OpenToonz being basically, for all practical purposes, the exact same thing for most people. But this is a lot of action. This is really going to require a pencil test and some hand-drawn animation. So, point being, I suppose that there's not really much point in stacking up a bunch of these storyboard shots in the Tahoma project, for the simple reason that we're obviously changing camera point of view. These are not subtle changes between these shots. So let's just go ahead and start with this shot and build out. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is hit the old B key I think I'll put the pencil size at -1. I believe this is the My Paint pencil. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so what we see here is actually this should be selected. So we've kind of grabbed the wrong moment here in the action. So this is really what's going on. I mean, this is our opening shot. But of course, this is the dilemma you face when you're doing a storyboard. Is, you know, do you want to capture the key moment of the shot, or do you want to capture the beginning of the shot? It's a fair question. Normally, you'd want to capture the key moment of the shot, but in practice, when you get into actually animating the thing, sometimes you kind of wish you had the beginning of it so you can just animate forward. At least I do, because I tend to be a guy that I don't really know why, but I tend to do a better job when I animate straight ahead. Okay, so let's do this very, very broadly, like so. Probably we could, since we're just having nothing but fun, let's go ahead and allow this to morph a little bit, and then we will pop this up here, and like that. Okay, boom, boom. Okay, yeah, so this is going to really be, I'm going to make it a duplicate, but frankly it's going to be closer to the first shot than the second. So if you want to sort of keep your drawings in order but not have this issue, you could just erase this. Yeah, that's interesting. So actually, 1, 2, kind of forgot about the whole alpha channel thing, didn't I? Okay, that's alright. I'll hit the S key, grab all of this, Control C, go here, Control V. Hello? I guess I gotta hit the S key first. Yep, there we go. Okay, so now we have this, this, this. Okay, cool. Now, with that having been done, then we need to, whoops, doggone it. Yeah, it's almost like a superhero move. It's pretty boss, pretty boss. Hey Clash Tunes, I made my latest video in Tahoma. Almost all the last videos of Tahoma made. One last Goku run. Oh, okay, cool. I use grouping technique to tweak the drawings and reuse it for small, subtle animation. Very good, very good. Sounds a lot like what I'm doing. Sounds a lot like what I do every day. Yeah, in this case, probably her head will actually wind up being a single drawing, and then basically the veil could actually be smacked over top of it, and then therefore we could use either the plastic tool or just the animation tools to bop her head around. So I'm always thinking about that. I'm always thinking about how many pieces do we need to break this into in order to animate what we need. The reality is that, you could animate the arm as a unit, with the caveat that you probably are going to want to animate the the fingers opening and whatever, and see, a situation like this is kind of it's hard to get away from having to do quite a bit of frame by frame animation here, since we've got the dynamics of pulling this off. So really, if we change the color to red, we're really going like this, and this is going to actually spread over several frames, and then it needs to be able to settle down and fall, which kind of frees us up on the face, actually, because there's really not that much that needs to be done, because all the action is in, with this sequence would be right here. I mean, that's really what you're going to see and think about, right? So here we go. And by the way, I give forth this warning today. I've got a bunch of stuff going on today, and I know the UPS guy is going to be coming to pick up a package sometime. Got a few things going on in the markets that I want to pay a little attention to. So for that reason, I give this warning that today's session could be abruptly ended at any time, or more likely at some point I will be taking a break. Okay, okay, so now let's block in the timing, because I can see from these key poses, I can see what the elements are that I need, right? It's basically body, head, arm, pretty much. You could even, honestly, you could put the veil in its own layer, I suppose. And by the way, this little bindu is like out of position. Wow, cool. If you do the same, when you clean up the animation, I'm very eager to learn if you do some other cool stuff. Yeah, it's pretty pedestrian actually, Clash Tunes. In other words, if you're pretty familiar with Tahoma, you probably won't see any big, you won't get any big surprises. I mean, the ink and paint process is pretty pedestrian. I usually just use, I don't use vectors, by the way, for ink and paint, although I usually do use them for shadows. So it's basically like raster levels 10 to be the pencil test. And then you're going to wind up with one level that's going to be ink and paint. You're going to have a level that's going to be a vector level with drawn shapes for shadows, probably. And in her case, the ink and paint will probably be broken into at least 3 levels: body, head, and arm, just to make it easier to manage the animation part. And the reason I mention that is because it's not really like there's that much frame-by-frame animation required here. The head could be, in fact, if you actually made the head and the body one piece, this is a great candidate for the plastic tool, because the natural, the natural bending and squishing that we'll get, throughout these areas will, the plastic tool will make that easy. So anyway, yeah, so there you go. And then it's also typical for me to have like a raster layer where I'll smack some airbrush over the top, like put a gradient around here just to give it some, make the color pop a bit, right? So are you drawing it all, not rigging the arm? Well, that's a good question, Max. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm saying here today, is based on what I'm seeing. For me, every scene is about making a pragmatic assessment of what's needed for that particular scene. It's kind of what makes my YouTube channel probably different from some people's, is I'm not really here to specifically teach OpenToonz or Tahoma, even though that's kind of my main tool lately. So in this case, what I see is, basically we have a choice, okay? The choice on this shot has to do with her hand, because you could, let's say you were not going to animate her hand. So the argument is everything's going to happen so fast that it's going to basically look like this, pretty much. In other words, the tweens aren't very necessary. If that's the case, let's say we're going to get into the shot with maybe 4 frames, so half a second, because I'm animating at 8 frames a second. She's going to smack her hand to her face instantly. It's basically really going to snap. So we'll say that's 1 second, and then she pops it off. Okay, so we're looking at about a 3-second sequence here. Basically, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so you could make, in this case, you could make it better by doing some animation on this hand. But even so, in all likelihood, I would probably just create the forearm and then and just animate it with the Animate tool, and maybe create a couple variations so that I could open up her hand. But really, that's about it. So that's really all you have here, is you get the head turn, the body responds kind of naturally, and you got the hand coming up, and then of course you're going to have to draw her face. Really, I should draw this one first, because ultimately her face is going to wind up getting covered up, and plus it's the same pose as this one. So basically I'll ink and paint that first, and that'll actually become the first inked and painted drawing. ¿Tú comprendes? I hope this makes sense. So then the question becomes, well, what about tweening? Well, you could tween it. You could actually use, even though I've got 3 drawings here, I would say at the ink and paint stage, what we're really talking about is also 3 drawings, but it's not 3 poses. It's going to be this drawing of her body, this drawing of her arm, so it then can be animated off screen, and then a layer of the veil, just so you can animate it separately. So, with that in mind, let's just get to work. Up, there we go. Now, what I'm gonna do. Okay, let's see. Can you make your animation goes? Hey, Razlad, glad to hear it. You're getting your new tablet. That's great. Okay, Clash Tunes. Yeah, I think I went to your channel once a zillion years ago, but yeah, I'll check it out. Let me check it out. Just because I want to be, you know, Mr. Encourage the troops. So I'm just basically doing a search on your channel. Okay. Wow, dude, 378K subscribers. That is awesome. You are just busting it. You're busting it. Okay, so what Clash Tunes is calling our attention to is this animation, and I will tell that shot doesn't really make sense. But I get why you did it, because you'd have to have the trees. You'd have to have, I mean, you got to figure out a way to do the trees kind of in 3D if you're going to. But I've said this for a long time. The hardest thing about doing 2D animation is when you're, you know, when you're moving things in the Z-axis. So, but yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. Without a doubt, I'm going to jump back to the start here. Now, I think your sense of timing, it looks to me like you worked in After Effects. Okay, so I'll come back to you, Max Magnus. Clash Tunes, let me ask you this. Are you inking with vectors? It looks to me like you're using vectors for the ink. Is that true? And if it is true, I would say that's the weakest part. The weak part of it is the quality of the ink work. Which some people would maybe disagree with me on that. Like this character here, the variation you have, like in the shape, in the thickness of the lines and stuff, actually a lot of people would probably like that, and I think it does look pretty good. It's really more on the Goku and stuff. It's like the lines look like they're just a little bit too thick, and they're a little bit too uniform. And that's a very hard thing to avoid if you're using vectors for ink. And the solution typically would be to actually change the thickness of the vector lines. So yeah, see, that's what I thought. And I tell you the truth, I mean, I would say this: the normal reason, if somebody uses vectors for ink, and for something like this Family Guy type stuff, it's completely appropriate to do so, because you want that really uniform line, right? But you still have to control the line. So the main problem that you tend to have with vectors is that they always come out thicker than you thought. So you draw this nice line. Okay, actually, I don't want this on. And when you actually see them, they tend to be too thick. What I have found lately is when I compare the line quality with a smart raster level, I have to set the vectors to a size of 0.1, and then that actually gives me a line thickness and quality that's kind of appropriate to that sort of anime look you're going for. What you're doing using vectors, I would expect it to be difficult to actually make it look like it looks like on TV, right? If you're trying to sort of match that look with Goku, it would be tough using vectors because they're just harder to control. Now, the thing you could do, let's just say, oops, that was a mistake. Let me go back here and create another vector level. I kind of touched on some of this stuff the other day, but first of all, if I was going to ink her with vectors, again, I would put the line thickness to 0.1. Because then when it renders, it actually fattens out just a tiny bit, as you can see here, and it looks great, and it's just about the right size that you want, again, for that anime look. So for me, your ink lines, they look fine, they're just too fat. And because they're too fat, they don't look like what I would expect to see if I was watching Goku on TV. And I'm just assuming that you're trying to pretty much match that look. The other thing you can do, I mean, obviously, the seductive thing about vectors is if you don't think you can draw very well, which a lot of people don't, then it's really nice to be able to edit the lines after the fact, right? So that is a benefit for a lot of people, for sure. So you can do that, but in your case, what you could also do is use the tire pump. Just go in and sort of surgically take the tire pump tool that's right here and just kind of thicken it up a little here, maybe thin it out a little there. And I mean, if you're going to have to go in and manually mess with the lines, in other words, if you're somebody who doesn't feel like you can just draw them, you know, like I do basically, then I would say if you got to spend all that time anyway, your ink and paint process almost becomes more like digital modeling. You know, like it's more the brain process that somebody working in Blender building a model goes through. And that's fine. It's not a bad approach to creating assets for a cartoon, actually. It's not a bad methodology at all. I don't like doing it that way because I like the visceral experience of just doodling, basically just drawing. So, and then also the other thing you can do with vectors is you can fiddle around with these vector effects, because some of these, if you put it in rendered mode, some of them actually have add some nice variation to your line quality. The catch is that some of these effects will really bog your computer down and really hamper your performance in real time as far as just interacting with Tahoma, and some of them won't. As I recall, this one's pretty darn good, and it looks good too because it just puts a little noise in the vector lines. So that's not a bad way to go. If I was going to ink with vectors, I'd probably consider using that too. So all right, Animate uses vectors, or at least turns drawings into vectors with special software. Crazy their workflow. Well, I think their workflow is crazy, actually, just because I can appreciate the artistry of it. I mean, I love what guys like, you know, I've mentioned maybe Yo-Yo Shinari. I like the stuff he's done with like Studio Trigger. But they have a very unique look too. But man, is it inefficient. I mean, even if you still had to do all the drawings individual and you use no digital tools, it would still be way, way faster to just do it directly on a computer than to draw and scan, you know. Plus you have all the paper hanging around. It seems silly to me. I don't know. I would just assume it's probably because that's what they're used to, and you know, it's kind of hard to teach an old dog new tricks, they say. All right, so now I got to get to work here. Let's ink. I'm not going to use vectors, by the way. I like to set my size from 1 to 5. Hardness is about in the middle, and usually when I'm inking, I actually smack the smoothing up a bit. It just really gets the lines under control, and I feel like these settings do allow me to get a line that's pretty much what I, you know, I'm getting what I'm kind of feeling in my brain I'm wanting to see. So all right, so you worked in After Effects, and anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's my bad, Max. I missed your question. It's a fair question, honestly. For me, okay, so there's a couple things to consider here. Okay, so when you're dealing with animation software, you kind of have the tug of war between digital animation tools, like the ability to transform and animate and have the computer tween for you, so versus having to do everything in frame-by-frame style. Okay, so there's that aspect of animation. And on the other hand, there's the aspect of a node-based compositing situation like this versus a stack-based animation or compositing model. So the reason I mention that distinction is because Krita, as far as the software I use, Krita would be the most like After Effects because it's stack-based. You know, it's a stack-based compositing situation. But the problem is any animation that you do is going to be very laborious frame-by-frame animation because it really doesn't have any other fancy schmancy tools. So that means that if you want the animation tools, and you probably do, then you pretty much, at least in the open source space, are not going to have an After Effects type program, you're going to have something that's going to be more of a node-based compositing. And in that scenario, I would point you to either here, OpenToonz, or Blender. Blender for compositing and even video editing, you know, forget all the 3D stuff, is pretty strong. Its node-based compositor is quite good. Gives you motion tracking, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the short answer is Blender. And the reason I give you kind of a long-winded explanation is because for some people, well, I would say in many cases, the only the thing that would make you want to stick with After Effects would typically be that you're comfortable with the stack-based compositing model versus a node-based compositing model. It's not really hard to wrap your head around, though. I've demonstrated here recently how things that I can do in Krita by just adding a layer, let's say, and putting it in overlay mode in order to like change lighting or something. To do the same thing here in OpenToonz or Tahoma is like, it's dead easy. I mean, it takes a step, but yeah. Yep. Blender is the king. I mean, Blender, the main reason I'm not using, I mean, I've got 3 different versions of Blender on this machine. Oh, it's kind of slow, huh? Well, I'll tell you, I don't know exactly what you mean by slow, but what I have definitely been noticing in recent releases here of Tahoma and OpenToonz, that the compositing render is like lightning fast. I mean, sometimes it takes a minute to sort of do some pre-computing, but you can have a really complex node set up with all kinds of blurs and glows and all that kind of crap, and it renders fast, man. And you know, because it doesn't try to give you, now what you can do is you can go into your panels, by the way, and you can open up a second viewer like this, put it in render mode like that, and put it on another screen so you can see what the final render is going to look like. Right? Slow playback, yeah. I mean, I always had the same problem with After Effects. I never was a huge fan. But Blender's got the same problem. I mean, real-time playback of stuff that you're compositing, you know, motion graphics and stuff, forget it. I mean, literally forget it. In Blender, you'd be way better off to just actually map your assets into the 3D space and just animate them. Like, you know, and I've showed that here on this channel plenty of times. What you do is you take an image sequence, let's say, of some animated material that maybe you hand drew or whatever, and then you go into Blender and you either map it to a plane, or there's even a simple, I mean, I can show it actually in Blender 2.81. I'll use 2.81 because that's kind of been my most favored version recently. But basically, you just you kind of say, all right, I don't care about compositing so much as I just want to get my work done, right? So therefore, a lot of times with Blender, the best solution is to just do your motion graphics literally in 3D space all the time. And the thing that you can do in Blender 2.8 or 9 or whatever, the most recent versions, is load an image, images as planes, and then you go in and you actually make it so it's an image sequence, so it's animated, and you can make it loop, you can animate when it starts and stops, you can run it in reverse, you can do all that stuff, and just build up your composite that way in the 3D space. And then with Blender 2.8 Plus, you're seeing everything in real time. So even though the performance in the 3D, well, Ajax is kind of sort of right. Blender's, you know, as far as, let's just say that I know they've been kind of poking at the caching model for the node-based compositor for years, right? How can we like cache the intermediate steps of the signal flow so that when somebody hits the play button, you know, they get to see it play back. And the reality is, It's just not performant. It never has been, and probably, I don't know if it ever will be. And for most applications, if you were to say, take your motion graphic elements, put them in the 3D space, and then literally use lights to light them or color them or things like that, you'd get all the same effects that you're getting in After Effects. And then in addition to that, you can set up collections so that some of the items in your scene get piped to different different pathways in the node-based compositor as well. So you've kind of got the best of both worlds. I tell you what, Momoristic, I'm glad you asked that, because I am using literally the default no frills Tahoma brush. I mean, I'm not using my paintbrushes. It's very, very, very simple, and what I've been finding lately is it looks real good. I mean, the basic brushes built into Tahoma or OpenToonz are quite nice. They feel good to work with, real visceral on the screen. I have a tablet screen that I'm using. So yeah, I don't go too fancy. It's pretty weird. It's a funny thing about that with like Photoshop or people who are really, really good tend to not use millions and millions of different brushes. I guess that's an arrogant statement. It sounds like I just said that I think I'm really good. That's really not what I meant. But it is true, though, that people who are good do have a tendency to not, be killing themselves trying to find zillions of brushes to use. But where it does help is on backgrounds. When you're doing, actually, I need to edit this a bit. When you're doing backgrounds and, like for foliage, there's just no contest. I mean, a good foliage brush just is simply going to save you a lot of time. So why are you going to kill yourself trying to draw leaves one by one? It's just stupid to do so, really. Because you're going to do it, and probably for most people, most of the time, the foliage brush will look better too, right? Okay, so yeah, we'd have a definite problem here with her anatomy. Can't believe this didn't like jump out at me sooner, but c'est la vie. Sometimes I can be quite the silly goose. So I gotta clamp this in a little bit. I just made her too big. Well, that's what can happen. I mean, you're doing a storyboard, you're zipping along, and you're capturing the energy of the story you're trying to tell, and sometimes you kind of get a little sloppy on characterization. So, okay, I was thinking about making planes for every body part and rigging characters that way. Okay, Max, here's the deal. Rigged approach to animation. In other words, your whole objective is to rig up a character, and you're going to use it over and over, like through the whole show. Now you might have variations on it for like a 3/4 view or side view or whatever, but basically you're saying, I'm all about the rig, baby. I'm all about setting up the puppet and then setting up the rigging so that I can control it, blah, blah, blah. If that's what you're trying to do, then Blender is going to kick butt for you. Blender's going to, I'd be all over Blender if I was doing that, if I wasn't doing so much hand-drawn stuff. That's my opinion. Feel pretty strong about it. What time is it? I might have to, well, I guess I don't have to duck out of here until probably about 10 o'clock or so. If you want to do, if you're not a really experienced with Blender and you're scared of the learning curve, which a lot of people are, then what you've described just from your comment about what you're trying to do would be the learning curve would be much easier to just use Tahoma for that. Tahoma or OpenToonz, because you could use the plastic tool to do deformations, and you can in the schematic you can set up a rig any way you want. So if I want this, if I want to animate what's on this layer, right, but I want to drag this along like a parent-child relationship, well, you just connect them up. So frankly, the schematic here becomes a very direct visual picture of the structure of your scene, for animation purposes. And then if you toggle to the effects schematic, this is where you do your compositing stuff. You know, this is your signal pipeline for you add a blur in here, and then you got quadzillions of effects, just like you have in Blender. So, and it's quite capable. Truthfully, in most respects, in my opinion, Tahoma or OpenToonz node-based compositing is much, much more performant across the board than Blender. So Blender is a bigger win if you actually want to really go down the oops, I'm on the wrong layer here. If you really want to go down the rigging path, which I'm not saying that critically. I mean, it's a perfectly fine choice, right? Then Blender, you know, if you're really committed to that type of animation and you want to get a lot of leverage, where I'm gonna suffer for 2 days setting up the puppet, getting everything to work, setting up controls, yada yada yada, and then, you know, for the next 2 months while I make my short film or whatever it is you're doing, you know, I'm animating. I'm not tweaking and rigging and all that. I sort of get through that. Now, of course, sometimes you do have to go back and improve your rig situation a little bit, but okay. Adobe Animate or Tahoma? Which is better? Oh, brother. Come on. People don't. I mean, that's the kind of thing that people start, you know, flaming about. My honest opinion is well, I have an old version of Flash. Okay, so I haven't used Adobe Animate since it's been called Animate, or since it's been in the cloud or whatever, right? But it looks like a very, 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 did I say very? Very capable program. And it's probably pretty darn stable too, I would guess. So, yeah, if somebody is starting new in animation, Adobe Animate wouldn't be a bad way to go. Now, I personally think I'd probably get frustrated with it because I'm not into doing everything with vectors. I like pixel type art. That's why I was animating a lot with Krita, you know, in the past. So that's just one perspective. I'm not a huge Adobe fan, but you know, Adobe Animate is probably a very, very stable, strong program. Been around for a long time, but again, I'm just, you know, when I've used Flash, I don't, just the drawing, the vectors, I just don't love it. You know, it's okay, but I don't really love it. So, all right, so we're gonna basically put that on its own layer and call it good. So I wanted to get that there so that I can take this drawing, smack it up to the top, this drawing, smack it up to the top, like so. We're gonna have to make some edits to her arm because I obviously made it look completely idiotic. Sorry about that, but we'll whip that into shape, and so that will fill in. I may go ahead and make this the same color as the sleeve. So I already have characters made and cut out, so I'm quick with Blender. Okay, so yeah, if you're good with Blender, I mean, there's nothing you can't do with Blender. I mean, you can set up drivers to do all kinds of, you know, crazy stuff. I mean, simple examples would be you bend your arm and the bicep flexes. You know, that type of stuff is stupidly easy in Blender. You know, it's really easy. Drivers are a doddle. So here, what I'm going to do is actually smack this over here, and I'll just kind of go like that. So this gets a little confusing. Actually, I have to upload frequently to make my channel survive, so always find ways to make animations fast and fun. Well, I'll tell you, Clash Tunes, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with your, yeah, I mean, the number of subscribers you have is just outstanding. So I hope you're making money from your YouTube channel with that many subscribers. Hey guys, I tell you what, I am going to take a couple minute break here. So hang tough, don't bail on me. But if you do, I'll still love you. I'm going to be back in 5, all right? And I am back. Hey, thanks to those of you who... It's slowly dying? Golly. With that many subs, though, Clash Tunes, I'm really curious about this. I mean... I'm actually very curious. I just can't imagine having... You know, what is it? It was a big number. I don't have the tab open, but it was like over 100,000 subs, wasn't it? I mean, it's a lot. Seems like that would be somewhat lucrative. But, what do I know? I definitely don't have lots of subs. I do okay. Okay. Yeah, there's a couple things about this that now that I look at it again, I'm definitely thinking, okay, Dave, you could probably do better. That's more like it. More consistent with what she's been doing. Okay, so now what we need to do, if we jump back to here, we kind of need this for our color scheme. Okay, so this is shot number 536. So what I'm going to do is open 536 and, well, actually I could do it this way. 300K. See, that's crazy, man. That's awesome. It makes you think, geez, I'd be a rich man if I had 300K subscribers. That's crazy good. So I wonder if there's, in that case, I wonder if there's like a very small number of videos that comprise a lot of the views, like a high number of the views. Hey, Golden Slime. Okay, so I think I'm in good shape here. I don't love the thumb there. I don't think that's quite appropriate. And I don't actually think I did the greatest job with her hand. That's really not. I need to basically do the hand based on what the pose really should be if she was grabbing the mask. So what I'm going to do is jump back to the pencil test just to. This is something I've been needing to do more of. Is don't just wing it with the ink, but rather. You know, get at least some kind of guide in there, so you're not flying blind. I'm kind of wanting her to grab it like that, I think. And now that that's in there, I can kind of massage it around, and that looks better, I think. I think so. I do. I think so. Okay. My friends still have 2 or 3 million subs. That's crazy, man. That is some awesome stuff. Well, I said the other day that I actually believe if I really wanted to have a high volume, you know, high traffic YouTube channel, I think I could probably do it. I mean, I have a pretty good sense of what I would probably have to do to accomplish that, and it is not what I'm doing here. You know, my focus is more on getting this show going because you know, because I've kind of got distribution for it lined up, you know, so I'm kind of in a good place as far as being able to capitalize on it. So I'm going to go to the browser, and what I want to do is go into my drawings folder, and I'm going to just look for the TLV level of TNR that we just looked at a minute ago, the close-up, so that I can just pull that in and steal the palette from it. So it's a little bit of a thing because you got to kind of browse through and find it. Where the heck is that? I think that's it right there. So I just double click that, and that I can load that into my scene. I guess double clicking it doesn't do the trick. You want to load it. And so now this will be in here just like magic. And what we can do is just steal the palette. So Control C, come over here, and I'm going to copy this palette into all the layers because this one not so much. This one, all I need is the pink of the veil. But with that, I can go ahead and delete that again. There's no reason to keep it in there. So one thing you do want to do is go into your scene cast. You'll notice the cast looks like it's empty here. Now if you browse down, you can find it. But what you want to do is remove all unused levels. That just keeps your OpenToonz or Tahoma shot clean. So it's a good idea to, if you're adding and deleting levels here and there. Oh yeah, I never saved this. Ooh, I broke my own rule. I never do that. I want to save this as 541. How embarrassing. I am a silly goose. Okay, so we'll let that save, give that a moment. But then, like I said, by cleaning out the cast, you're sort of letting the OpenToonz, the TNZ file, save cleanly, so it doesn't have a bunch of garbage in there that doesn't really belong in the scene. So, okay, so do you have someone purchasing the show you're making? Well, they're not purchasing it. If you guys will bear with me for half a second. Actually, there's there's a YouTube channel called Encourage TV that is run by Bridgestone Multimedia. So they're a company out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and so they have so they're pretty connected. I mean, they've got some people like, here's John Schneider welcoming you to their channel, and they've got another video where they use oh, his name escapes me. He played Hercules. Darn it, his name escapes me. But you know, Mr. Hercules guy from the show back in the 90s. He did one of these little videos for them saying, hey, you know, welcome to their channel. But anyway, they've got, how many subs do they have? So they've got 578,000 subscribers, and but their channel, so they actually are they're a distributor who does quite a good job of in the sort of faith and family, you know, family friendly type movies kind of thing. But if you search here the word healed, then you get these two movies, which are two movies that I wrote and directed. Actually, I acted in this one. You can see me there in that shot right there in the thumbnail. But wrote, directed, edited, wrote the musical score. You know, basically I produced these movies pretty much all by myself, you know, plus my cast and a couple helpers. And so this one's done quite well. The original from 2012 made about $1 million. This one's doing actually quite well too in terms of monthly royalties. It's doing better than this one now. It took a couple of years to build up, but so anyway, yeah, I mean, they're a good company. They've been around a long time, and they, you know, I'm good friends with the guy who handled the acquisition of my movie some years ago, and so basically we have every reason to expect that we will be working together on this show to get it out there everywhere, kind of thing, right? So okay, I need to be in normal mode, so I'm gonna go ahead and just smack down the ink and paint here just because I'm kind of in the mood, right? So yeah, because I have an enthusiastic distributor who's done a good job for me on other properties that I've produced, you know, we would just expect to be working together on this. Okay, I'm gonna kill these levels so I'm not confused by them, and look what I did. Look what I did. I did what I used to do in Krita all the time. That's a huge mistake. Sorry about that. Okay, huge mistake. I really have to apologize. That was dumb. Okay, so what I have to do is in this level, I think I'll just erase this. Let me see. Okay, this is a little strange. It's not in that level. How in the heck did I copy that? Getting a little confused here. That's correct. Okay, so what about this? Oh wait, okay, I was seeing this wrong. Why am I seeing double on the veil here? See, that's weird. I've just turned those two levels off. When I solo this one, it looks right. I'm definitely a little confused here, but for the moment, we will not worry about it. Okay, so there we go. What is her hair color? Basically, oops, the hoodie has a leak. Oh my, your hoodie has a leak. Don't leak your hoodie. Boom. This is this. This is that. Okay, cool. Now, you say, oh, but Dave, that doesn't look very good. Look at all those, look at all that. Ugh. You're right. You're right. What you do is you do a fill operation in freehand mode, and you just lasso this stuff, and boop, 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 cleans it right up. No problem. This is not a problem, people. This is nothing we have to be crying about. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, and then over here, I would probably use this color, and yeah, just go in and clean a few things up. No biggie. Okay, so I hit the N key. That looks pretty freaking good, doesn't it? Okay, so do I need staff? At this point, no, not really. And Clash Tunes, the honest answer is no. I basically, I made, hey Maria, I made films for 10 years. Okay, so I made like 8 movies. 2 of them were successful. I would say 3 of them were good. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but they were all made for less than $10,000 a piece. So if you have a movie you make for less than 10 grand and the movie earns, $1 million, usually that's a good thing. Now, I did not get all that money. It would be wonderful if I had, but no. That is not how it happened. But, you know what, for those of you who are around here a lot, I won't retell the story again because it's probably like, okay, Dave, like how big of an ego do you have that you tell this story all the time? Yeah, I get it. I know. It's true. But no, I mean, I've got some experience in the world of filmmaking. That's a fact. Kind of blew this, didn't I? Okay, there we go. So now what we got to do is take this, and what we need is just this color right here. Control C, Control V. So to answer your question, here's the deal. And I'm answering the question about if I need staff. Okay, the idea that I might need staff at some point, there is that possibility. Okay, but basically where I'm at is that I have been planning to open up a crowdfund. Okay, because at this point, this show, the initial idea was that there's going to be a 2-part pilot. So it's 2 episodes that comprise the pilot. And then, but there's actually 12 episodes that are sort of mapped out. So again, from the distribution standpoint, I will just say that my distributor is enthused about the idea of supporting this show through the through 12 episodes. I mean, the expectation based on what he's seeing in the market is that we can expect a reasonable return on a project like this. So it's like, okay, what the heck, let's do it. So basically, I quit doing the movie thing a few years back after I made my last film, just because I kind of been there, done that, It's just not that interesting anymore, and I always kind of liked animation. I've always been a cartoonist, and by the way, what I'm doing is I'm creating a vector level now, like that, because I'm going to use that for the shadows. So I'm going to turn on auto close, auto group, and auto fill. And the reason I'm going to do that is so I can put a shadow layer here. Okay, so no problem at all on asking about if there will be some opportunities. When I chose to go down the road of a crowdfund, what I did was I conferred with my distributor, about the state of the project. And basically what we agreed was that probably, okay, by the way, you'll notice when I render here, it turns all black and opaque. You got to do this. Go to Scene Settings and turn on Enable Column Color Filter and Transparency for rendering. Now you don't have to do that because you can control the transparency through the node-based compositing, but I've just found for shadows it's usually pretty quick and easy to just do it this way. So anyway, with so I was basically tooling up to do a crowdfund, but then I talked to my distributor and we sort of agreed, okay, let's wait for a moment and let's explore a couple other possibilities as far as companies that are larger digital platforms that may have an interest in having exclusive, have what we would call a window of exclusivity, meaning for a period of time the show would only appear on their platform, right? And that could be a win for them, and that could be a win for us, right? So that's something that's being explored, like literally this week. And if something comes out of that, which it probably won't, but it could, it's possible, then it may be unnecessary to go down the crowdfunding road. If those opportunities aren't there, and it makes more sense to just forge ahead with a crowdfund, then I would expect that I would have their support in promoting the crowdfund, just because if the more successful the show is and the more successful I am, ultimately the more successful they are, because obviously the more people that are aware of the property, the more people that watch it, and hence the more money they make from all the different platforms. Like I always mention Tubi because I like Tubi, that type of thing. So okay, so in this case, there's two. Okay, so let me check here. So anyway, I didn't really finish the point. So the point about it was that if this show turned out to be one of those rare cases where you have like an Indiegogo campaign that really grabs and earns a certain amount of money, because the actual dollar figure is in the neighborhood of $700,000 if you wanted to underwrite the entire show. So the entire life cycle of 12 episodes at a per episode price of $36,000 basically. That's what it would take to fully underwrite the production. And if that were to happen, if you get those kinds of dollars, then I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to relax and just get busy and keep animating and keep rocking and rolling and crank this thing out. But if it actually exploded like that, I probably would definitely want to consider hiring some helpers. Now, whether I need help in the writing department is probably an open question. I expect it'd probably be a while before I would be looking for writers, I think. Just because I'm a pretty accomplished writer and I'm pretty fast too. So there's not a great reason to have writers. What I would really need if I was going to hire somebody, again, pending a successful crowdfund situation, or a really, really aggressive outlook from some platform that wanted to underwrite the show. If that happened, then at that point it would be possible to say, well, okay, let's hire some little helpers so that I can actually maintain. The idea would be to actually kick up the pace, because right now everything is sort of mapped out based on the idea that I can write, animate, score, get the voices recorded, smack it all together. Of one episode, a 24-minute episode, I can do that pretty reasonably in about 4 months. 3 months, I was hoping it could be done in 3 months, but that's pretty aggressive. I mean, I'm thinking that's probably too aggressive. So, I think it's a 4-month production cycle. That's my sense at this point. I just collapsed the arm into a sub scene, so now the arm's all by itself in this scene, and now we can treat those two layers together as a single unit for the purpose of animation, right? So, and again, in the case of the hand, probably, let me look at this. Oops, I need to turn this back on. Okay, so her head goes up. So probably the wise course of action here would be to take these two levels, pipe them through the plastic tool, and get her body animated, and then figure out what the hand needs to do to make that make sense. Because this is obviously just a variation of this, and this is literally the same shot with the veil removed. So therefore, what we'll do is we'll take these two guys, extend them down, and what I'm going to do is create a plastic tool level based on just the body. That'll work. And then my kind of usual rundown here on a plastic tool skeleton kind of goes like this. I'm basically protecting this stuff down here, so when stuff is animated up here, it doesn't cause this to peel up off in front of the screen, basically. A lot of times for something like this, what I typically do is put a node kind of in the middle of the forehead, and then this would be the main one for sort of tilting the neck. And then a lot of times, if you're going to do that, you could actually link this to some nodes here to really control this area, but I think probably what I'll do is go ahead and kind of put a couple nodes out like this so that I can pretty much control the wrinkles and the folding and stuff separately. You know, it's always a bit of an experiment to get the... Yep, the story's the most important part. So yeah, basically, I mean, it's like the basic plot line of the first 12 episodes is pretty well figured out. And again, like I said, I mean, I typically write 5 pages a day. Like when I've written screenplays on those movies I showed you, I'm going to generally write about 5 pages an hour. So, you know, if I'm in the zone, I can knock out 15 pages a day. So if we've got all the beats mapped out and I've sort of done a day of preliminary work, I would be able to probably crank out an episode in about 2 or 3 days. Actually, doesn't take very long. Once I really got serious on this show, the writing was pretty quick. I spent about a week on it. But then again, to be fair, the week was spent writing an episode that's double length. This is actually 2 episodes in one. You know, this is 50-some pages. So, but you know, here's the deal. At some point, yeah, and everything Max is saying is true. I mean, there's just absolutely nothing incorrect. And I would also say, don't necessarily be determined to embrace open source software just for the sake of doing it. I mean, if you're getting your work done in After Effects, then use After Effects. You know, no big deal. It's a very capable software. So anyway, so this shows you kind of what's going to go wrong, and I can see that probably we actually need to be adjusting things here. But there's an obvious problem. Actually, I was wrong about that. This is actually pretty good. The problem is you can see the way her eyes are slanting around. So there's 2 things we need to do. We need to put the veil and the shadow through the plastic tool, and we also need some nodes to get her eyes under control. You know, and I reserve the right to screw it up. You know, I've definitely created rigs that have turned out to not quite work as well as I had hoped. But I'm thinking if I put in a couple protective nodes here, it's going to keep those eyes from distorting so much. And you could even, you know, kind of go out like this to just sort of strengthen the way it's going to grab the parts of the head. Even though it's cloth, there's parts that you kind of want to have remain rigid-ish. So now if I kind of dance that around, that's not too bad. That's a little more under control. And then I can sort of add to that, you know, some tweaks here. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and move that up like that because that's actually the starting pose anyway. She actually animates back to the pose that the original drawing showed. So now what we have to do is we have to take the, go into the stage schematic. And so here's our plastic tool mesh, and what we need to do is take the column 4, which is the veil, and column 5, which is the shadow, and they need to be piped through the plastic tool. And that makes it so that they distort as well when the plastic tool does its thing. Okay, so now I'm not really sure why the plastic tool causes the shadow to go opaque. That's one of those little things. It's not really a bug, but it's probably something in Tahoma that should be addressed. As you can see, the rendered picture looks fine. So, okay, so again, little bit of a case here where let me see here. We got this pose. Oh yeah, so we got to go. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, so actually this does go here. I'm sorry. And this would be here. We can kind of let this come back down like that. This is what I was talking about. Watch right here. See that? That kind of stuff happens all the time in OpenToonz and Tahoma. So it's not really a crack on the plastic tool, because the truth is, if you plan carefully, you can mitigate that, and it could be argued that it actually gives you more control over your skeleton rig. So I'm thinking she's going to be there. Boy, that's really egregious. The solution is probably to put an extra node right there. Yep, see, that took care of it. So now it stretches instead of popping up like that. Okay, so, but yeah, I mean, Max Magnus 777 is correct. Obviously, of all the things I do, you know, I'm a composer, and I'm a cartoonist, and I'm blah blah blah. Probably the thing that I have the most experience with, that I'm the most confident in, is my writing. You know, I've written screenplays for films that have been produced and have been successful. So, not too worried about my abilities in that regard. But the points are well taken. You're completely correct. Now, I use a tool called Dramatica software, pretty old software actually, that does help somewhat with the put it this way, it's kind of like using Blender. There's a really big long learning curve, but once you wrap your head around it, it's a very useful tool for finding holes in a story. But again, really big learning curve. I think most people that ever fiddle with it probably fiddle with it a bit and give up, actually. Right there. Man, sometimes that's hard to control. Oh, I see the problem. Okay, let's go back to build skeleton mode. Well, that's the bad news. The good news is that you can always edit the skeleton again after the fact. So that's what I meant to do. So now if we go back here, now we have to see what artifacts have been caused by that. Looks like not too much, although here, honestly, scrunching her head down a little bit seems like it would be advised. Yeah, it's critically important. I mean the whole thing is you want people to you know, grab the characters and enjoy. It's the characters that keep you in the show, keep you in the story. My starting point in the thinking is with The Simpsons. They had a monster writing team for the first 3 seasons. South Park also, they got big and were great. Yeah, and there's certain now look at that. Look at that. See what happened? For some reason, it actually tweened that. Now that's not really right, because, at least unless I forgot something here, let's go into our preferences, animation. This is set to constant interpolation, not linear interpolation. So that tween right there should not be happening. But that's okay. What we'll do is we'll take that back out. And if you wonder, well, what the heck's that about, Dave? I just like rolling my own tweens. I just do. So I'm going to, let's see here. Smack an onion skin in here, back here. Trying to see what's going on. Just so you guys know, I do have some concerns about the way the way her head is being like distended a little bit. I'm not really thrilled with that. Now that could be my fault actually. Let's go back in here. I need to flip this. Yeah, I mean that's pretty good. Alright, we'll keep rocking with it. Okay, so we got this. The hand's going to come up, and then when we get to here, what's going to happen actually is this is going to be taken away. But the problem is that this level is being piped through the plastic tool. So what actually makes the most sense is to animate the hand, and then at some point, either on another level or within the hand level, put the veil back in on that level. I probably shouldn't have put it in. I don't know. It's a crapshoot. This is a weird case. Okay, and this is completely unacceptable. Ugh. Holy cow. How the heck did that happen? I'm afraid I need to redo this key. Okay, so we got a little tween, and then we're going to smack her up this way. And then I would think her shoulders would maybe come down a little bit. But we don't want to go too crazy. Okay, that's fine. Alright, let's go back to this. Extend this all the way down to here. And I think for simplicity, I'm going to just use the Animate tool on this. So, especially because if I'm going to put the veil, okay, this is an important point actually. If I'm going to put the veil in the same layer, then you really don't probably want to use the plastic tool, because if you use the plastic tool, once it's piped through the mesh, you can't draw in the X sheet anymore. So it's impossible to draw in a way that gives you the context you're looking for. So it would be better to animate this guy with the Animate tool. And I just moved its center around so that the arm kind of rotates sort of naturally. And so we'll have this starting point where it's just barely on the screen. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to, again, put I like to roll my own tweens. What I tend to find works well for this type of a show is just a little change like that, followed by a big change, because we are operating at 8 frames per second here, by the way. Right? So let's crop that to the camera so we can really see what's going on. And I think for now we'll turn the plastic mesh off. So we're just trying to see how that looks timing-wise. Boom. Boom. Okay. Not too shabby. So we get to here, and the arm is basically, I'm not liking, I mean, the way I did it from the drawing. I'm not sure I'm buying that. Like, I don't know, this could work, but you'd have to add some more stuff in the sub-X sheet to fill in the missing arm. So, which you could do, not a big deal. Again, this is a problem of losing context. If I go down into this level, I don't see the body anymore. So, and I also don't have the animation. So it's a little trickier. It would almost make more sense, and this is probably the best choice in this case, is to actually stick another layer here, just another smart raster level, just for animating the veil, right? So let's do that. I'm going to take this. Gosh, let's do it this way. I'm going to take this color, cut it to the clipboard, and then we'll we'll say, okay, all right, this is going to be pretty easy. So we're going to have we just need a shape here, and the problem we're going to have is that the shape's not going to be closed. Okay, so I'm going to just give it three frames, and then what I'm going to do is solo the layer so that I can then get these shapes closed so that they fill properly, right? Okay, so that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is grab this color, Control C, paste it into the palette, hit the fill tool, and we need to be in normal mode. So, by the way, just for fun, we'll use frame range. Let's use frame range. So we're going to go click, click, and see if Tahoma did a good job of filling in all the intermediate frames, of which there's only one. Okay, cool. That worked. All right, so now what we're going to do is go here and just pop in, you know, get some detail in there so it doesn't look completely stupid. And then turn the other levels back on. And obviously what we see here, let me think about this one. Well, this is going to be on the screen like this for basically once it lands. That's what we're going to see. So I'm thinking we might as well... Well, there's different ways to do it, but the most efficient way would be to simply put a shape here. Actually, we could... I don't want to use a vector layer because I do need outlines. So what I'm going to do is just go like this. I'm going to draw a line there, add another... Actually, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to add this color right here. Control C, Control V, and then, sorry, I have to solo the layer again because I want to just fill this area. Whoops. Okay, that was a silly mistake. There, that'll do the trick. And I think this is going to work. And then I think if I do it this way, I could also bake some shadows into that. But I'm thinking, yeah, the only thing I don't like at all, is this. Let me hit the Animate tool and fix this. I don't like that. That feels natural to me. That definitely does not. I'm going to delete this key and redo it. All I want to do is put just a little change. Because what I find is that 8 frames a second, like a tiny change followed by a big change, tends to have a lot of snap to it, right? Okay, so you mentioned a 2D platform. I'm not sure if it was a site or a generalization. 2D platform. If I said the word platform, I probably was referring to... Did I say 2D platform? I didn't mean to. I meant to say video platform. So by platform, I mean... you know, again, Tubi, Netflix would be a platform, Amazon Prime would be a platform, you know, like a streaming video platform is what I meant. Probably. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think that's probably what I was talking about. Okay, so boom, boom. I like it. I like it muy mucho. Actually feels pretty good. Do we need to have a tween in here where her hand position changes? It's basically optional. I mean, if we're going to go... okay, by the way, I got to stop and point something out. Is Darren around today? Because I just now realized the answer to my question that I asked the other day. So the question I asked was this. I said, if I create a sub scene and I were to animate some stuff in this sub scene, if I jump back up out of the sub scene, those animation changes do not show up here. And it's very confusing for newbies. They don't understand why it doesn't show up here. You have to grab the header of the level and click resequence. So it's going to recalculate what gets exposed through the higher level X sheet. And my question was, seems like that'd be the default behavior. If you change some animation here and come up out of here, it seems like when you rise up out of the subscene, by default, you would want the software to be triggered to do the resequence automatically. So my question was, what scenario? I can't imagine a scenario where you wouldn't want that to happen. But actually, we just bumped straight into it. This is the scenario where you would not want resequencing to happen automatically. You notice, this is essentially just a flat drawing. But it's extended way down here with the Animate tool, and it's moved and everything. But it's still just a static drawing being animated. If we resequence this, what's going to happen is we're going to see this cell full. And I don't know, there's probably a middle ground where the software would detect that you're actually adding some frames or animation. And so if it never changes, don't resequence. So anyway, so now I've answered my own question. What a wonderful, wonderful day. That is, as Professor Farnsworth would say, good news, everyone. That's what he would say, because he would find it very, very wonderful. All right, so now, I think I like it. I actually think it's got pretty good snap. The only thing missing would probably be another shadow layer. Let's put it in render mode and see what we've got. I'm gonna go ahead and let it cache into memory. The only thing that's a little objectionable is the distortion at the side of her face, but actually, I think we're probably okay. We're close. I mean, we're close to the danger zone in terms of what we're allowing ourselves to get away with. One thing I think I would do to punch it up a little bit would be, okay. So now this is what I mentioned earlier. I want to add a little shadow here, but you can't. Once it's piped through the plastic tool, you can't do that. Now, in this case, I could probably fake it. What I'm wanting to do is basically right between these two shapes, I'm wanting a little shadow. So I'll probably, if I just guess, I'm probably going to get it pretty close to right. But sometimes that's quite a bit harder. And so what you have to do is essentially unplug it from the plastic tool. Like, I would have to take this level, pull it back out like that, so I can see what I'm doing, you know, with the shadow. So I can draw in the X sheet and see my changes right there. So anyway, okay. What do we have now? What's missing? Yeah, I think that an additional shadow layer above the veil probably is called for. So this is getting to be a little bit of a this is becoming a layery scene, I must say. What I'm going to do is add a vector level so that I can basically have just a separate separate little interaction here. Okay, that can extend to there, but then this, what we would want to do is basically something like this, probably. Okay, and then as kind of demonstrated earlier, if we turn this down to about 12, that'll give us a nice shadow. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. And so then here, now, yeah, unfortunately, let me check something here. Yeah, that's above the veil, so I guess that's right. So yeah, we can go like this. Ta-da. Ta-da. Sorry, had a little brain fart there and didn't realize my layer stacking was precisely what I needed it to be. Thank heavens for small favors. So we're basically putting in some shadows here for obvious reasons. And I think we are done, other than getting some kind of background in there. So everybody good? Everybody feeling good? Like we're on track here? I think so. I want to go into my output settings and change this to plus scenes slash 541 render. That's just my convention that I use. Ah, darn it. All caps. Curses. Curses, curses, curses. The file operations are actually case sensitive, believe it or not, in Tahoma, which means that if you're having Tahoma create folders for you, if you give them all caps when the folder that exists on your hard drive is small caps, it will actually get confused. And so basically the file ops that Tahoma uses are basically Linux friendly, you might say. So anyway, bottom line is that I've kind of learned the hard way that upper and lowercase matters when you're talking about files that Tahoma is actually going to be creating, folders that it's going to be creating. So, okay. Taking a drink of my tasty beverage, and by the way, while that's saving, I'm jumping back here and I'm going to say, yes, I think that's actually our background. So we want the background from 534. I think that was a vector thing. And unfortunately, Tahoma's taking forever to save, which is usually not a great sign. Hopefully, Tahoma didn't just screw me and decide to lock up for, well, probably only the second time in a month. Well, it looks like it just had to save. Looks like we're in good shape. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look and see if scene 534, actually, let's just open it up. I'm going to go ahead and open it and see what we find. So there's 534. Yeah, and the background, okay. What is the background? Oh, I think this is a sub-X sheet as well. It is. Okay, so we've got these two. So we've got a gradient to punch it up, and then we've got basically a vector level. So what I really want, I really kind of just want the painting, actually, but I do not know of a way to just easily use just this one. So what I'm going to do is let's do a little browsing fun and see how far we get. I'm going to discard the changes on that. So my thinking is that if I go into my drawings folder, I think that the vector level, the PLI file, should be in here. I just need to kind of search here a bit and see if I find it. Are the PLIs in the drawings folder? I think so. The raster stuff is in the extras folder. I'm kind of looking here to see if I'm seeing any PLIs, because I know the TLVs get stuck in the drawings folder, but well, there's one other way to kind of find out. I don't go in and snag PLI files for reuse that often, but it's kind of coming up more because I'm finding myself using using vectors for backgrounds more often for reasons that I covered thoroughly, I think. And yes, yeah, there it is. There it is. I'm going to load that, and then I'm also going to load from my extras folder the gradient, which again, it's a bit of a drag that you have to sort of visually scan through. This would probably be more efficient in my my image browser app that I use, particularly because it's hard to like be sure which one of these is the one I'm looking for. I'm gonna say this probably isn't worth it. It might be this. Let's go for it, just for fun. These gradients tend to be kind of similar anyway, so let's just let's be wingers. Okay, so there you have a background. Let's see what it looks like rendered. Not too bad, actually. It needs to be scaled up a little bit, but I would say let's put the sofa in the background, and let's put the gradient actually over top, and then we'll use overlay mode to use that to punch up the saturation and the overall look of the shot. Okay, so this, again, being a vector level, The main thing I need to do here is just kind of size it up. It's just too small. Okay, and then, yeah, probably something like that. Something like that. Just be able to catch the edge of it. All right, let's look at what it looks like rendered. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of kind of post-production work. Number one, hitting F3 to open my schematic, and I want to go to the effects schematic. Okay, so step one, I want to take column 1, which is my background, and I want to give it a little bitty bit of a blur. Little bit of a blur. Nothing like what it's about to turn into. This is column 1, isn't it? Yeah. Column 1, blur. Why does it not look blurred? People? That's a bit strange. Why does it not look blurred? Of course you can. Oh wait, I see why. There's 2 column 1s. Well, friends, this is a great example of why you want to properly name your columns and not follow Dave's horrible example, because it turns out that actually it's pretty easy to make a silly mistake. And am I wrong here? No, I actually was right the first time. Okay. Okay, well, yet again, we're finding out how silly we can be. Oh no, I see what I did wrong. I'm sorry. This is the sketch. The sketch can be deleted. That whole layer can be removed now. We don't need it anymore. What we want is this. Column 1. Okay. Now we'll get our blur thing going. No problem. There we go. There we go. I want that to be about a, probably about a 10 pixel blur. Yep, something like that. Little bit of a focus thing. Okay, and even that seems a little strong to me. I just don't want to see the, I don't want to see the clear delineation of the vector shapes like that. I want to blur it out a little bit. So, in my other window, dirty airbrush around the outside edge of the shot. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to composite, layer blending, INO, overlay mode. So we're going to use the gradient as the foreground. Attention, it kind of punches up the saturation and contrast, while at the same time, if you look real close, you'll see that there's actually, now there's kind of a variation in her skin tone. Something you kind of see a lot in anime, frankly. Okay, so now, let me see here. I am going to take all of Tianara, everything, and put it in a sub scene. Okay, that was not the way that was supposed to go. I'm going to grab this and go Control-Shift down arrow, which for me is a hotkey to turn her everything for her into a sub scene. Now I actually made a mistake, so let me undo that. And Tahoma just blew up. So, okay, that means I'm probably going to have to backtrack and redo some stuff because I wasn't thinking, and Tahoma does not blow up very often at all, and now it did, and I was moving too fast. So what happened, we probably just lost a good 10 minutes of work, I'm sure, because I don't think I saved it super recently. I may have lost a lot, actually. This has happened before. It's happened a million times in Krita, but it's pretty rare in Tahoma, so it's not the end of the world. But just to kind of finish the point, what I was going to do is turn this into a sub scene, and so that the background, the character, and the overlay were just 3 simple scenes, 3 simple levels. And then I could use the schematic to do some slight tweaks on her as a, treat her entire character, even though it consists of many levels, treat it as a single thing. And basically I was going to put the body highlight effect on it. But unfortunately, people, we're screwed. So there you go. Well, it's blur it slightly over time to get her focused. Okay, Max. Yeah, you could do that. There have certainly been instances over the months and years where I've done things kind of like that. But, yeah, so everything that involved the background we lost. That you're going to watch me recreate it here very, very quickly. Before I do that, though, I want to just check and make sure we have what I think we have. You know what? Ultimately, I may want to, yeah, I'm going to make one little change here on the animation here. Boom. I guess I intended to do this and never got around to it. So put this in animate mode, and we're going to put just a little tweak there and a little tweak there. So we've sort of got her movement and the movement of the veil working against each other. All right, so I will save my work like I should have done in the first place, and we will recreate this really, really fast. Now what I'm going to do, actually, since I've learned from my mistake, what I'm going to do is clean house first. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then I'm going to literally take all of her layers and hit Control Shift down arrow and turn her into a sub X sheet. Okay? Then I'm going to save all. So now we have a nested sub X sheet situation. You know, we've got this, or sub scene is what Tahoma calls it. So you've got a sub scene, and then within that sub scene there's another sub scene of just the arm. That's okay. Theoretically, you can nest them as deeply as you want for organizational purposes, with this small caveat, which is what you saw happen 5 minutes ago. Sometimes gets a little confused in regard to data management, and sometimes you get crashes. And frankly, when they happen, it usually has something to do with subscenes, actually, in my experience. So that's just a little due diligence there. And now, all we got to do is bring the background back in, and then turn around and very, very quickly re-add the effects. So no big deal. What did we do? We went to extras, and we found a gradient that was a likely candidate. So let's just do that again. Normally I prefer the Fast Stone image browser because the thumbnails are bigger. You know, it's easier to see what you're doing. So I don't remember which one I used. I think it was this one. In this case, actually, this one would probably be better. But yeah, it's hard to say. So we're going to load that. And then the other thing I needed was the drawing of the couch or the sofa, whatever you want to call it. And there it is. We're going to load that. And now we can come back here, and we're going to put the gradient on top, the sofa on the bottom. And kind of a good example, actually, of how recovering from the occasional crashes usually is not that big of a deal, actually. Okay, so A key, I was going to scale this up. And I'm doing this, normally I use the widget that gives you control of all the translation tools, but just for fun I'm demonstrating how you can kind of use them one at a time. I tend to like seeing things cropped to the camera view. And that's it. So now we're going to save all. I want to see how far back really we went here. Are my output settings right? They are. That's good. That's good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is open the schematic and just redo the effects work. Okay? Well, this is kind of interesting. To answer Max Magnus 777's question. Okay, so okay, can you blur it slightly over time to get her focused? Okay, what I was gonna say is, there have been plenty of situations, more in Krita, where I've used, if you've got like a one-frame tween, putting some motion blur on it can be effective for sure. So I've certainly done that quite a lot of times. So if the focus is on the scarf, you could even blur her for a couple frames or not. It would have different meaning. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're thinking as a storyteller, which is great. You know, you're really thinking about how the subtleties of the scene might affect the audience's experience. You know, that would be countered by the perspective that, oh, come on, you know, this all goes by so fast that it's really not hard to read what the deal is here. And it is true. It's only a 3-second scene. So in this case, you know, the beautiful thing about animation is in terms of the demands on you as an animator for precision in your imagery, there's a direct trade-off, like a seesaw, between how much animation you're doing and how careful you have to be, for the simple reason that when things are moving fast, your brain can't process it anyway. So you can get a lot sloppier with being on character and things like that when you have things moving quickly. For this show, especially lately, that's really not the case, although we are entering into a time now that is more of a action type of sequence. So this is the body highlight effect. If we go into render mode, you'll see what it does. So it just gives us this rim light. Looks quite nice. Am I going to use the glow effect on this scene? Probably not. I think not. The transparency, I'm going to pump the transparency up just a little bit, but basically the body highlight effect looks about right to me for this shot. Okay, so the other things I did was I took the sofa and I blurred it, didn't I? Yep, I did. And it seems to me I blurred it to the tune of around 6 or 8 pixels. So there, I've done that. And save all. Guys, I think that's it. I think that was all I had for this shot. So yeah, you could basically the motion blur, I will say the motion blur in Krita is kind of a lot easier to control. So I haven't done a ton with motion blur. Now in this case, I will say this. If you were going to use motion blur, it would work if we go down into this sub scene. Okay, so let's save all, and I'm going to just check my cast here real quick too, just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, we're in good shape. Okay, so the motion blur effect in Tahoma really doesn't respect frame-by-frame animation at all. As far as it's concerned, each drawing is just a drawing. It doesn't know that anything moved. However, over here with the arm, if we hit our schematic, you could on column 8, is it column 8? Yeah. Column 7, column 8, there it is. It's kind of bugging me that when I select the columns here, they're not being selected. In OpenToonz, it was always the case. Okay, that's column 4. What am I missing here? Column 7, column 8. Yeah, see, when I select column 7, it doesn't get selected here. That's not good. That's a literal disconnect between what's actually going on in the program and what the software is showing you. So that's bad. That would be considered a bug. When I select this level, it should be selected here as well. Anyway, so to max Magnus 777's point, what you would maybe do is put some motion blur here, and you gotta fiddle with it. I haven't really used the motion blur here a lot. It's just got an intensity setting, so who knows. I would assume this frame right here is where it would show up the most, because you've got the greatest change over time, but frankly, where the heck is the motion blur? Alright, I don't know. I'm gonna hit 200 just to see what happens. Because that's a little annoying. Am I on the wrong level here? Did I miss something? This is column 8. Yeah, that's the arm. I'm definitely seeing some voodoo here though. Ah, my bad. Okay, well that's okay though. You should I mean, here's the arm level with its shadow, but it's one level up. This is what's being animated, so we should see motion blur. So this is why one of the reasons I don't use the motion blur here in Tahoma very much. It's only useful if things are moving vis-a-vis the animation tools, and I don't think I've ever used it where it's actually dialed in and looked good. Whereas in Krita, it would be easy to just smack a motion blur over top of that, tell it exactly what direction you want it to run, how long you want it to be, the whole thing. So I will leave that effect in there just to kind of sort of see what happens. For the animation in Krita, this type of thing came up a lot, and it happens that it hasn't come up very much lately here in Tahoma. But for sure, if I was working in Krita, the disadvantage is I don't have any animation tools. Everything's frame by frame animation. But for smacking in a quick and dirty frame with either some motion blur or whatever, just a quick and dirty overlay, what you're suggesting is maybe you just add another layer. This is kind of getting back to that After Effects versus node-based compositing thing. When you don't have to go too deep, frankly, for most situations, a layer-based paradigm is probably better. But it's pretty easy to go too deep, where you've got to branch your signal flow off in different directions, like what you see here. I mean, ostensibly, you could be running this blurred image out to the output, but also branching it off in a different direction with some additional processing that's then overlaid over top of it, and you can get as complex as you want. Whereas in a stack-based paradigm like After Effects or frankly Krita, it can be done, but it's trickier and somewhat non-intuitive how you would actually take some content and split it off in different directions and recombine it in different ways. It's basically the idea of a one-way path from down through the stack versus the ability to have many paths down through the stack that recombine in different ways. So they're both useful. I mean, one's more efficient and probably a little more interactive, which would be your stack-based, and then one is more powerful at the price of more complexity. So anyway, the point, though, to your point, here's the thing. To go in and actually add some blur manually to her hand is basically impossible, actually. If we go down here, and the reason it's impossible is that this is a smart raster level. This is the inherent weakness in smart raster levels. They are inherently a flat pixel grid, where every pixel is either transparent or filled with some color, whether it's an outline or whether it's a fill color. But this is a flat grid of color. There is no way really to blur it. You kind of can, like you could maybe use the, like if I use multiple drawings, then I could maybe use the selection tool to force it to blur out a little bit. But it's basically clunky. I mean, it's a pretty clunky process to get controllable, very selective surgical blurring going on. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. So I need to lighten up these outlines, by the way. They're all a little bit on the dark side. On the dark side. Oh, on the dark side. Remember that song? You guys probably don't. That was like a made-for-TV movie starring Michael Pere back in the 1980s. You can draw a color to it. Well, that's the thing. What I was going to say is what you could do is draw another layer. You could add another layer over top of it. So manifestly, the question is this. Does it freaking matter? Do we really care? Because you're right. What you could do is you could say, all right, well, let's just add a raster level, right? And then maybe what we'll do is say, because she's moving fast here, let's turn this off, preview mode. So she's going to smack from here to here. So there's the big motion here. So really this is probably the drawing. And by the way, it probably bears mentioning that if you're going to do this, you probably would want to put a frame in between these two because it does snap from here to here. So what you might do is say, okay, I'm going to take my oil paintbrush or something. That's my airbrush. That's my ink brush. I don't think that is the oil paintbrush, but it probably should be, actually. Let's go back over here. Usually for the kind of thing we're talking about here, I would use this brush. And then what I would do is I would use the color sampler to grab this color and just do it manually and put it on another layer. Again, I don't know if this would look that great or is even the best idea ever, but doesn't hurt to try. So then, you know, because it's an oil paint brush and it blends nicely, then you could kind of do something like this. I'm not being super careful here because I'm dubious as to whether it's actually a great idea. But you never know. So what the heck? Let's give it a crack. We have to kind of pre-render that to see what it looks like. So again, this isn't the greatest execution of this type of idea ever, but what I'm saying is, so what did I do is I effectively gave it 1 frame of motion blur, right? And you can see actually what, so the danger actually with motion blur, I've bumped into this many times, which is why I only use it very occasionally. The reality is that blurring things does have the effect that Max mentioned. No, AE is a great program. I mean, come on, make no mistake about it. But what you're seeing here is that the motion blur really calls attention to itself, like in a big way. Now that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you're trying to do. But so, you know, let's turn the opacity of it down, right? And so as you see, you know, my argument in this case would be, I don't know that it's helping. It actually, all it does is create a flash on the screen that draws attention to the moment of movement. And the whole point is that moment of movement really doesn't even exist because we're at 8 frames a second. So what we do is we do a little tween like that to cue the audience that something's about to happen, totally psychologically. You don't see it, you just feel it. And then pop, snap to the new position. So what we're doing is we're taking that snap and we're diluting it 100%. We're actually causing it to take twice as long as it actually took. Now, again, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. It's a judgment call. In this case, I'm probably not loving it. And then, again, you could argue that, well, yeah, Dave, that's because you did a really crappy job of it. Fair enough, fair enough. I'll take that. Take that hit. Okay, but, I mean, suffice to say, the reason I didn't add motion blur is because I kind of knew in advance that it wasn't going to be necessary. But probably more to Max's point, right, the motion blur, that is true. There aren't too many things in Tahoma that truly manifestly kind of like suck a lot, but the tools that are available for motion blur are pretty lame. So there is another way. I'll show you what my way would be, and it basically comes back to a stack-based or a completely different approach altogether. I'll show you what there's another way that would solve the problem quite quickly and easily. But here's what it is. I'm going to go here. I'm going to render this like that. Okay? Now everybody sit tight for a second because this is going to go by so fast you're not even going to believe it. We're getting back here to something I said earlier. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the N key. Is this saving right now? I think it might be. Meanwhile, I'm opening up Krita. Okay. N key. Hello, N key. Okay, you are getting on my nerves here. N key. Pretty weird. The N key, which shows you your frame at the actual size that it's going to be rendered, does not work. The hotkey doesn't work if you are not on a smart raster level, which baffles me, but okay. So now I'm going Alt Print Screen, if you can believe it. I'm going to go New File in Krita. I'm going to say, oh heck, just create something from the clipboard. It's kind of a wacky size, but okay. So yeah, can you believe it? I'm actually going to create it from the clipboard. This is like the simplest poor man's way to get image stuff from one program to another. So I'm hitting the G key in erase mode, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally go like this and just chop things out. Boom, 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 boom. So you say, wow, this is kind of an expensive thing you're having to do here, Dave. Takes a long time, right? No. No. It's pretty quick, actually. So, oh, come on. I wasn't in erase mode. I had to hit the E key. So I'm going to just go like that, and then just lasso all this stuff and get rid of it. Okay. Alright, and now I'm going to go ahead and crop the darn thing, because why the heck not? So let's crop it to there. But we want to give it a little bit of room for that motion blur. And then I'm just going to go into my filter, blur, motion blur. And let's just do a crazy motion blur of 60 pixels. And now we can literally decide what we want the angle of it to be. This used to be better, actually. It used to be we could just drag it around in a circle to point it in the direction we wanted, and that doesn't really seem to be the case anymore, which is pretty silly. But it wouldn't be the first time that Krita had a really cool feature that the devs made a change and basically wrecked. Yeah, it's happened more than once. Okay, we're getting there. 210 degrees. Alright, and now I'm going to go select all, Control C, jump back to Tahoma, go to this level right here and hit Control V. And now we've got the motion blurred version that we just cut and pasted from Krita. We could use that. So that would give us a lot more control over it. Obviously, you do need to use the Animate tool to kind of get it to where it's supposed to be, like so. But, yeah, basically, kind of sort of doable. So I do that sometimes. It hasn't come up this last week or so. I've been pretty much in Tahoma for the last week. But the way I did that one, it actually puts a little bounce on it. So not horrible. The thing you'd probably do is maybe add another one right here. What you would do is you would delete this frame so that her hand disappears, and then put in a motion blur across the screen this way so that it can then land here, and then of course the veil lands as well. So anyway, Control Shift R. I think I already did this, but I'm gonna render my scene, and just as a matter of due diligence, I'm gonna go into my scene cast. Remove all unused levels so that we've got a good clean file that we're saving, and I'm going to jump over to, hey Inio-san, we're going to jump over to here and go pull in the new shot that I just did, which was what, 541. I'm going to actually have to go after this anyway because I got to go check some things that have been languishing this morning. So 8 frames per second. Let's pull this in. I definitely don't love the that little distortion on her cheek, but it might be okay. Let's see what we have here. Let's look at yesterday's shot. Or actually, this was this morning I did this one. Ow. And then here's her. You know, I would say the motion blur is probably okay. I mean, I'll leave it in there for the moment. I can always take it out later if I change my mind. But you know, frankly, the whole movement should probably be quicker. Boom, boom, not boom, wait, boom. So, but I think with that, I'm gonna wrap it up for today because, like I said, I got a few things I need to attend to. So. Then you need to blur when she moves the other direction, which costs time. Right, and the only reason that's problematic is because I am restricting the animation, with very few exceptions, to 8 frames per second. So it changes your whole thinking about timing, because there's a lot of stuff that goes by that happens quickly where you don't actually have an extra frame in between the 2 frames to add a little extra tween or blur or whatever. If you add it in, what it does is it causes the whole motion to play so slowly that it looks worse. So there's a little bit of a tug of war there that you're trying to balance. So anyway, that's it for me. That was 2 hours ish, and I need to go do some other things. So with that, my friends, thank you for being here. And as you know, there